Hello, Knox County students. I'm Karen Pallison and I teach at Holston Middle School. Today's lesson is based on the Week 2 assignment for Grade 8 ELA. If you don't have this assignment, it can be found by visiting the KCS website at knoxschools.org. Click See All resources under the KCS at Home Summer Edition logo. Please be sure to complete the entire week's assignment before continuing this video. If this video is hard for you to understand, you can do one of four things. Turn on the closed captions if that's available. 2, adjust the playback speed to slow down the video. 3, consider watching short clips, then pause, listen, and watch again. 4, ask someone in your home to watch the video with you. Stop frequently and talk to your partner about what you heard and understood. Our Grade 8 summer task number 2 is about satirical humor. Our learning target is to analyze how authors use satire to expose human folly. In this activity, we're going to read a satirical article and think about how the author uses satire to express disapproval on a particular topic. I've underlined that part to help us keep in mind what our focus is supposed to be. Standards that we'll be covering today are our RI Reading Informational Text 8.4, which is determining the meaning of words and phrases as they are used in a text, including figurative, connotative, and technical meanings, and to analyze the impact of those specific word choices on meaning and tone. Satire has tone to it, and including analogies or allusions to other texts. And then we also have a writing standard, 8.2, which is to use appropriate and varied transitions to create cohesion and clarify the relationships among ideas and concepts. You'll see that when we come to answering the questions, and you'll see how I've structured some of my answers using transitional words and phrases. So we've got some vocabulary to just kind of puzzle out here before we start, just to kind of help us be better readers. Satire. If you don't know what satire is, it's a form of comedy that uses humor, irony, or exaggeration to expose and criticize issues in society or people's weaknesses. Satirists are writers who rely on satire to deride or mock a subject, make fun of. For example, television shows such as The Daily Show or The Colbert Report use satire to talk about current topics. There are political cartoons or caricatures that use satire as well. Derision. Derision is the strong disapproval or mocking of an idea or topic. You can show derision when talking about someone or something you don't like. To denounce something is to publicly declare something to be wrong. You stand out there and you say, I denounce. So the example I've given is the dictator made a speech to denounce the actions of his enemies, to tear them down, to declare them wrong. So about the author, The Onion, which is where this article is taken from, is an American digital media company and news satire organization that publishes articles on international, national, and local news. They're based in Chicago. The company originated as a weekly print publication on August 29, 1988 in Madison, Wisconsin. The Onion's articles cover current events, both real and fictional, satirizing the tone and format of traditional news organizations with stories, editorials, op-ed pieces, and person-in-the-street interviews using a traditional news website layout and a formal editorial voice. So they actually look like the real news, it sounds like the real news, but it's got this bite to it, the satire, which is the humor part, which makes it funny. So we'll see if we can figure that out in the text that we're going to read. So setting our purpose for reading is that we're going to read the article. I'm going to read it to you all the way through without stopping to make any notes or anything like that. We'll come back to that. Hopefully you've already read the text and you have made some annotations. So this should not be new. You should have seen this for all of the lessons if you've been doing them online with us. Today, though, I want us to make sure that we're underlining important ideas that make you laugh or that you recognize as humor. You can then circle words you don't know, use context clues or a dictionary to help you understand those words, and then write a questions to the side or comments to the side, which you'll see I've done in my annotation. So I've got some sample ones there for you to the side so that if you want to use those, you can, or use your own. All right, so before we start, there's a little green box to the side of your text if you've read it, and it's called Underfunded Schools. The title of the article is Underfunded Schools Forced to Cut Past Tense from Language Programs. Okay. So it's got that box there on the side, and it's talk about grammar and usage, active and passive voice. Hopefully you've learned this year a little bit about active and passive voice when your teachers have taught you about writing. And so there are two ways that writers write. So the active and passive voice is used to emphasize different ideas in writing. And it's pretty much boiled down to these two ideas. Active voice emphasizes who or what is doing the action. So in the example I've given you there in paragraph 9, the quote, the past tense provides students with a unique and consistent outlet for self-expression. Past tense is the subject of the sentence, provides is the verb, the past tense is providing the action, right? It's what's it doing? It's providing. Does that make sense? So that's active, it's actively doing that. Passive voice then is the opposite. It emphasizes the person or thing being acted upon. So in paragraph 11, the quote, school districts in California have been forced to cut addition and subtraction from their math departments. So the verb there is have been forced, and what's been forced is the school districts. So the school districts are the recipients of the action. They're being acted upon instead of actually doing the action. Okay, so and that's on the side there, just for you to kind of keep in mind or in reference for understanding. I'm now going to read the text to you. Hopefully you'll follow along with your text. Underfunded schools forced to cut past tense from language programs. From The Onion, Washington. Faced with ongoing budget crises, underfunded schools nationwide are increasingly left with no option but to cut the past tense, a grammatical construction traditionally used to relate all actions in states that have transpired at an earlier point in time, from their standard English and language arts programs. A part of American school curricula for more than 200 years, the past tense was deemed by school administrators to be too expensive to keep in primary and secondary education. This was by no means an easy decision, but teaching our students to conjugate verbs in a way that would allow them to describe events that have already occurred is a luxury that we can no longer afford, Phoenix Area High School Principal Sam Pennick said. With our current budget, the past tense must unfortunately become a thing of the past. In the most dramatic display of the new trend yet, the Tennessee Department of Education decided Monday to remove ED endings from all of the state's English classrooms, saving struggling schools an estimated $3 million each year. Officials say they plan to slowly phase out the tense by first eliminating the past perfect. Once students have adjusted to the change, the past progressive, the past continuous, the past perfect progressive, and the simple past will be cut. Hundreds of school districts across the country are expected to follow suit. This is the end of an era, said Alicia Reynolds, a school district director in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. For some, reading and writing about things not immediately taking place was almost as much a part of school as history class and social studies. That is, until we were forced to drop history class and social studies a couple months ago, Reynolds added. Nevertheless, a number of educators are coming out against the cuts, claiming that the embattled verb tense, while outmoded, still plays an important role in the development of today's youth. Much like art and music, the past tense provides students with a unique and consistent outlet for self-expression, South Boston English teacher David Flowen said. Without it, I fear many of our students will lack a number of important creative skills, like being able to describe anything that happened earlier in the day. Despite concerns that cutting the past tense will prevent graduates from communicating effectively in the workplace, the home, the grocery store, church, and various other public spaces, a number of lawmakers, such as Utah Senator Orrin Hatch, have welcomed the cuts as proof that the American school system is taking a more forward-thinking approach to education. Our tax dollars should be spent preparing our children for the future, not for what has already happened, Hatch said at a recent press conference. It's about time we stopped wasting everyone's time with who did what or went where. The past tense is, by definition, outdated. Said Hatch, I can't even remember the last time I had to use it. Past tense instruction is only the latest school program to face the chopping block. School districts in California have been forced to cut addition and subtraction from their math departments, while nearly all high schools have reduced foreign language courses to only the most basic phrases, including, may I please use the bathroom, and No, I do not want to go to the beach. Some legislators are even calling for an end to teaching grammar itself, saying that in many school districts where funding is lacking, students rarely learn grammar at all. Regardless of the recent upheaval, students throughout the country are learning to accept and even embrace the change to their curriculum. At first, I think the decision to drop the past tense from class is ridiculous, and I feel very upset by it, said David Keller, a 7th grade student at Hampstead School in Fort Myers, Florida. But now it's almost like it never happens. So let's make some observations. So we've got 2 questions there. The first one is, what do you notice about the details in this essay? Here's my response. I noticed that the article uses real places such as Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and people, Senator Orrin Hatch is a real person, to give credibility to the topic. Some of the other people, such as the woman from Tuscaloosa and the gentleman from South Boston, and then there was the other one from somewhere in Florida, I think. I don't know if those are real people or not. Those could be made up, but the places are real. So using some of those things helps give the satire, right, credibility. And our second observation is, what do you notice in the essay that someone skimming over it might miss? So my answer, by reading carefully, I noticed that the satire or sarcasm about deleting the tense of the English language taught to students in school. So as you can see, I've got some underlining done, and so here's some of my annotations. So first thing I want to note to myself is, how can schools get rid of a language tense? So that's kind of the ridiculous part mentioned previously. I've got a vocabulary word, transpired, it's in purple. So I need to know what transpired means. I need to actually look for the definition. Transpired means something that has taken place. So I could say a grammatical construction traditionally used to relate all actions and states that have taken place at an earlier point in time. Makes sense. The last thing there in paragraph 2 is I've got, again, the past tense is underlined, and then I've got too expensive. Well, we don't pay to use the past tense. So I think that's some satire, right? That's haha, like we don't pay to use language. So that is part of what creates the satire. Paragraph 3 here. So paragraph 3, going back into the text, I've got underlined a luxury that we can no longer afford. Well, there's a pun here. A luxury that we can no longer afford. Luxuries, or something that is a luxury, is usually not affordable. That's why it's a luxury, right? Food is a necessity. Having a place to sleep is a necessity. Having clothes to wear is a necessity. Having a cell phone is a luxury, right? Driving a really expensive car is a luxury. So I don't know how using the past tense can be seen as a luxury, but that again rolls to the satire. Let's see, what else have we got? The past tense must unfortunately become a thing of the past. That's a ha-ha moment right there. Past tense is the past. So that's a big play on words right there. Again, super funny. I hope you caught it. So then in paragraph 5, what I've got outlined there are basically, these are just the different past tenses that are in the English language. And as you progress through school, especially if you take a foreign language, you'll learn more about these and how they work. But we've got them. They're the past perfect, the past progressive, past continuous, past perfect, progressive, and then just the simple past tense. So they're trying to make a point that if we removed all the ED endings, right, and have saved $3 million per school per year, then how much could we save if we took out all the others? All right. So moving on to our next section of text, paragraph 6. I've got underlined there, reading and writing about things not immediately taking place was almost as much a part of school as history class and social studies. So history and social studies are the study of things not immediately taking place. So again, here's kind of a play on words. We need those, right? So the past has already been dropped. So if you drop a history class and a social studies class, that's dropping the past. So again, there's that deep meaning when you take your time and read closely, you can catch, plays on words like that. So then I've got in paragraph 8, I've got 2 vocabulary words. I've got embattled, which means beset by problems or difficulties, right? So claiming that the embattled verb tense, meaning the past tense, has problems or difficulties. while outmoded, and outmoded means it's out of style and it's not new. Oh, could it be the past? Okay, do we see how this is continuing to showcase here? The past is being made fun of, right, in very different ways. So paragraph 9, I've got some couple words there. We'll talk about going back and looking at connotation of words. So I've got unique and consistent because they kind of describe what that brings. And then I've got underlined without it, I fear, without it, right? Past tense. Many of our students will lack a number of important creative skills, like being able to describe anything that happened earlier in the day. So imagine if you didn't have the past tense, you couldn't recall what happened to you that morning, right? So if your teacher says, "Where is your pencil?" you wouldn't be able to say, "Well, I left it in my other classroom," right? Because you wouldn't have the past tense. Paragraph 10 here has got quite a bit in it. So it says, despite concerns that the cutting of the past tense will prevent graduates from communicating effectively in these different places, which is what we send you to school for, right? To be able to work in the future. I've underlined in purple there, preparing our children for the future, not for what has already happened. So then we've got, again, there are play on words. Future, right, in the beginning, and then the past, what's already happened. So you've got that passing there. And then, so I've got that, and I've got an arrow here where it says, this is a contradiction. Children go to school to prepare for the future, the workplace, the home, etc., by learning what has already happened. So we have to have the social studies and the history and using the past tense to be able to give a current and correct description about what's gone on in our lives. This last little piece here in purple, I can't even remember the last time I had to use it. That quote is in past tense. So that's the last time. So there again, that's part of that satire. That's part of that play on words. It's basically calling out and saying, you're telling us that we need to get rid of it, but you used it yourself. So it kind of creates that satire tone. Next section, paragraph 11. So the latest school program to face the chopping block is because there's always something in schools being deleted or gotten rid of or outdated, so to save money. So that's kind of funny right there. It's kind of ironic. School districts, this is funny, have been forced to cut addition and subtraction from their math departments. Last I figured, you can't cut adding and subtraction from math, just like the past tense needs to be taught. So there you go. We have to have those functions. So that's kind of adding to that whole satire that we can just delete something and not use it anymore, which is a crazy idea. And then also the foreign language. So we're not going to teach you all about the foreign language. We're going to just teach you to use 4 or 5 or 6, key phrases, right? May I use the bathroom? No, I don't want to go to the beach. Teach ending grammar itself. So that's kind of adding to that whole, like, this would never happen. So then in this last part here is paragraph 13. This is the most satirical piece of the whole puzzle, because this last paragraph is in the present tense. So if you look at the verbs, you've got is and feel, and it is like it never happens, right? Happens in the present. But that's all about the past. So again, you've got that satire, you've got that cross comedy, you've got that humor. Going back to our questions here, you may not be able to see some of those words. What role does the first paragraph play in the structure of this article? And my response was, the role the first paragraph plays in the structure of the article is to identify the current issue of underfunded schools and to satirize the predicament of having to lose a necessary grammar structure taught to students. You'll see in the structure of my response, I've included, and I teach this to my students, to use the question as the beginning of their answer. So that's the part that's in black. And then what's in red is what I found from the text to be able to support my response. That's my evidence. Question 3, how do quotes from specific people throughout the article add to the development of ideas? The use of quotes from specific people throughout the article add to the development of ideas for the article by making the article seem more realistic and credible, thus making it harder to identify the satire. So that kind of covers what we did in part of the observation, right? Which was, you know, using those credible sources makes it look like real news. So if you're not reading it closely enough, you're not going to pick up on the satire. Question 4. How does the use of the present tense in the last quote in paragraph 13 emphasize the satire? So my response was, the use of present tense in the last quote of paragraph 13, and then I've added the quote, but now it's almost like it never happens, shows how ridiculous a person sounds when he or she is unable to use the past tense, which is the purpose of the satire in the article. So this is kind of the whole reason. So the buildup of the whole article, right, it drives home the point that we need the past tense, even though we're talking about cutting it from schools. All right, question 5, paraphrase the definition of satire. So I've given you the definition of satire, right? We did it earlier in the presentation. And I've highlighted these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 words. So because sometimes we're given definitions and, you know, if I don't know what irony, sarcasm, ridicule, denouncing, deriding, vice, and folly are, do I really know what satire is? So sometimes what we need to do is we need to go a little deeper and earn a personal context or a connection to what is being given to us. So irony. Irony is the opposite of what is meant or expected. Okay, and there are 3 types of irony, but overall irony is we expect one thing, we get something else. That's what makes it funny. Sarcasm is the bitter or cutting remark that mocks or taunts. Makes fun. So sarcasm, right? It's that verbal irony. It's like, oh, it's a super nice day when it's raining cats and dogs. Let's see, ridicule is an instance of making fun of. So if you ridicule someone or something, you're making fun of it. Denouncing, which we've talked about, is condemning or expressing strong disapproval of something. Deriding is mocking, taunting, or making fun of, okay? Vice is an immoral or evil habit or practice, such as gambling, you know, or other bad things, you know, vandalism, bad things. And then folly is a foolish action or something that's absurd. So if we were to go back and try to rewrite the definition of satire, even if you just verbally do it with a new understanding of these new words, and see if that definition doesn't stick a little better with you. So stop the video here, kind of practice, write out a couple different sentences, try them out, see what you come up with. Here's my off-the-cuff one. A form of high comedy is the use of giving the opposite of what is expected, bitter remarks that mock or taunt somebody and or make fun of, in exposing, showing someone's strong disapproval of mocking or making fun of something, humans, you know, bad habits or foolish actions. So that could be an example. Try one on your own. See if that doesn't help you stick with what satire means, and you could put it in your own words. Okay, question 6. Highly connotative diction is a language that contains a strong positive or negative meaning. So connotation, positive or negative. Would you rather be known as nosy or curious? That's my go-to connotation, right? Being nosy is more negative than being curious, right? We like it. Adults like it when you're curious. You want to know about things, right? Isn't that the same thing as being nosy? So reread the text and place an exclamation point by the highly connotative diction that stands out to you. Note the effect of these words in the My Notes space. I've just given you a couple here that I saw. You might have found something different because it's kind of subjective. What you might think is more positive or negative, I might not think is more positive or negative or has this connotation. So just here's a couple that I found. Paragraph 1 where it said budget crises indicates fear and negativity, right? So there's always a budget crisis. But this is budget crises, which is more than one crisis. So you've already kind of got that connotation of like, oh my gosh, this is a bad thing. Paragraph 3, as I said earlier, luxury indicates something that's out of reach for most people. So that's like, you know, but the past tense, using the past tense is out of people's zone of what they can have. So this next one, question 7, circle and explain your response to the to this text. So you've been given a starter. I think this text is what? Hilarious, funny, clever, ridiculous, and then because. So pick one of those 4 words. And then discuss the parts of the text that made you laugh and describe how the connotative words helped create the humor. So I think this text is clever. So there's the word I've chosen, because the examples given throughout the article to create the satire do just that. In paragraph 1, the reader is given the dilemma that schools have to drop teaching past tense grammar and usage to students to survive, a most far out circumstance. The fact that the past tense is labeled a luxury in paragraph 3 and that the, quote, past tense must unfortunately become a thing of the past in paragraph 4 is a hilarious play on words. It is this very play on words that creates the satire, which is the point of the article for the reader. Only after close reading the article 2 or 3 times can the reader pick up on the subtleties of the satire so as to be distinguished from real text. So based on all of that, and I could actually put a closing or concluding sentence on here that says, and for those reasons, this is why I feel the text is clever. It's not ridiculous in my world because it's not so far out there. It is funny, not super hilarious, but to me overall, the entire text is just super clever. The play on words, the puns, the connotations of words, that overall, and then just the situations that are presented. We're going to delete addition and subtraction in math. Okay. I mean, it's just clever, the connections that were made. And then you had a graphic organizer at the end. This hopefully looks like that, and you were supposed to use that. I just pointed out here that you could go back to question 5 for the definitions of irony, sarcasm, and ridicule, which we just talked about. So the vice or folly exposed in the text. And remember that a vice is an evil habit or practice, and folly is a foolish action. So neither one of those are good things. So what were the bad things that were exposed in the text? Well, the loss of basic subject matter taught in schools, grammar, addition, subtraction, is associated with the reduction in funding for schools. Schools are meant to teach students what they need to be successful members of society, but they can't if there is nothing to teach. So that's kind of the foolish action, right? That's not something that we need to take away, right? We need to take away other bad things, but grammar, addition, subtraction, those are things that we need to learn. So what's my textual evidence for the following? Piece of irony would be the student quote in paragraph 13 that is all in the present tense. So that's ironic. We would expect, right? It's the opposite of what is meant or expected. We would expect that the student would be able to speak in the present tense, but it doesn't sound right. So just proving the fact that we need the past tense. Sarcasm, that verbal irony. It's about time, so we've got a quote. It's about time we stopped wasting everyone's time with who did what or went where. So this was found in paragraph 10. It was that quote by Orrin Hatch. And he said, it's about time, past tense is time, that we stopped wasting everyone's time. So it's time we stopped wasting time with who did or when. So he's talking about we don't need the past, we need to focus on the future. So that's sarcastic. And then lastly, ridicule is making fun of. Students rarely use grammar at all. Well, that's ridiculous. So in paragraph 11 is where that quote is. Students rarely use grammar at all. So there we go. I hope that you were kind of on point with some of this. Go back and go a little bit more slowly through it if you need to just really puzzle things through. But there you go. I hope that you've enjoyed this lesson on the literary element of satire. Enjoy your summer and never stop learning. I've given you here a couple examples that I talked about early on. So The Onion, you can look these up. The Onion is this whole source that's where the satire is. The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, The Daily Show with Trevor Noah is satire. And then this is a political cartoon. So what really scares kids? Ghosts, reading about ghosts, that doesn't scare you all. Reading about vampires, you're used to that. But a longer school year, eek, okay? So there we've got some satire, right? That's what really scares you off. So again, I hope that you enjoyed this lesson on satirical humor and you have a better understanding of satire. Go out and look for it. All right. Have a great day. Enjoy your summer.